I told one parent they couldn't bring 2 extra kids to my son's birthday party, and somehow that made me the bad guy. Because after I said no politely, reasonably, with everything already planned, she didn't argue. She didn't push back. She just pulled her kid from the party entirely. And now my son is the one asking why his friend isn't coming. In a small town where stories travel faster than facts, I can already feel it turning against us. So now I'm stuck wondering, did I set a normal boundary? Or did I just ruin my kid's birthday over something that didn't really matter? Today is my son John's 8th birthday. And if you've ever had kids or even just been around them, you know that 8 is a big deal. It's that age where birthdays stop being just about cake and presents and start becoming something more. They become social. They become meaningful. They become something kids look forward to for weeks. And John has been counting this down like it's the biggest day of his year. Every morning it was another update. 5 more days. 3 more days. Tomorrow's the day. He's been planning it in his head nonstop, who he wants there, what games they'll play, what kind of cake he hopes we got. It's not just a party to him, it's his moment. And my partner, she really takes that seriously. She doesn't go over the top in a flashy way, but she puts so much thought into every detail. She makes lists, then makes better lists, then double-checks everything. Snacks that she knows kids will actually eat. Decorations that match what John likes right now. Activities to keep them busy so it doesn't turn into chaos. And we plan all of this carefully because we have to. We're not just throwing money around. Everything has a budget. We count how many kids are coming. We calculate how much food we need. We make sure there's enough, but not so much that we waste money. Because right now, like for most families, things are tight. And a party like this, it adds up faster than you expect. So we planned ahead. We organized everything. We made sure we had exactly what we needed for the number of kids who said they were coming. No extra. No buffer. Just enough. And by the night before the party, everything felt ready, controlled, like we had done it right, like all that effort had paid off. Or at least, that's what we thought. One of the kids John really wanted there was Travis. They're not the kind of friends who call each other every day or have sleepovers every weekend. But they're the kind of friends who just naturally end up together. They sit near each other in class. Not assigned, just ended up there and stayed. They partner up for projects. They're usually on the same team during recess games. If there's a group forming, somehow they drift into the same one without even thinking about it. John doesn't talk about a lot of kids from school. But Travis? His name comes up in small, casual ways. Me and Travis played soccer today. Travis said this funny thing in class. Travis is really good at drawing. Nothing dramatic, nothing over the top, but consistent. And as a parent, you notice those things. You notice which names keep coming back, which kids matter even if your child doesn't say it directly. So when we were putting together the invite list, and John was thinking out loud about who he wanted there, Travis was one of the first names he mentioned. Not with excitement or pressure, just naturally, like of course he'd be there. Like it wouldn't even be the same party without him. And that was enough. No hesitation. Travis was invited. Now this is where things started to feel just a little off. We sent out invitations well ahead of time. Nothing last minute. Nothing confusing. Clear details. Date, time, location. Plenty of notice for everyone. And for the most part, parents responded the way you'd expect. Some right away quick, yes, we'll be there. Some took a couple days. A few needed a reminder. That's normal. But Travis's mom, Renee? Nothing. No reply. No acknowledgement. Just silence. At first, it wasn't a big deal. People get busy. Messages get missed. But as the days went by, it started to matter. Because we weren't just waiting out of curiosity, we needed a head count. We were buying food, planning portions, figuring out how many kids would be in the house, and every maybe throws that off. So we kept checking, refreshing messages, rereading the invite thread, still nothing. And I could tell it was starting to bother my partner. Not in an angry way, just that quiet, creeping frustration that comes from not knowing, because you can't plan properly when someone won't just give you a simple answer. Eventually, the night before the party, she sends a message. Careful. Polite. Low pressure. Hey, just checking in, we're finalizing numbers. No guilt. No push. Just trying to close the loop. And finally, we get a response. Renee says Travis will be there. Simple as that. And honestly, relief. Because at that point, that's all we needed. A yes or no. Now we could finalize everything. Lock in the numbers. Stop second guessing. Everything felt back on track. Under control again, or at least, for a moment it did. Because right after confirming, she adds something. And the way she says it, it's almost casual. Like it's already decided. Like it's just part of the plan. She says Travis will be coming. And then, almost as an afterthought, with his 2 younger brothers. And then, let me know if that's not okay. I remember just staring at my phone for a second. Reading it again, making sure I didn't misunderstand. Because that's not a small ask. That's not, hey, can I bring an extra snack? That's not, hey, is it okay if I stay for a bit? That's 2 additional kids. Last minute. Kids we didn't invite. Kids we didn't plan for. And not even the same age group. 6 and 4. Which completely changes the dynamic. And the tone of the message, it didn't really feel like a question. It felt more like a formality. Like she assumed it would be fine. Like saying no would somehow be the unusual response. And that's the part that made me pause. Because suddenly, I wasn't just thinking about logistics anymore. I was thinking, is this normal? Do people just do this? Do they just add extra kids to someone else's event the day before and expect it to work? And then that second thought hit me. If I say no, am I the problem? My partner came to me later that afternoon. She had her phone in her hand. And I could tell, just from the way she was holding it, this wasn't a simple question. She said, is it harsh if we say no? Not angry, not defensive, just unsure. And that stuck with me. Because she's not someone who says no easily. She's the one who tries to make things work. The one who adjusts. The one who would rather take on extra stress than make someone else uncomfortable. So the fact that she was even asking that meant she was already torn. I didn't answer right away, because part of me did feel bad. Not for the mom, but for the kids, because they didn't ask for this. They didn't plan it. They're just showing up wherever they're taken. And saying no feels like you're excluding them, even if that's not really what's happening. But then I started thinking about everything else. The numbers we already finalized, the food we already bought, the fact that we had just enough for the kids who RSVP'd, not extra, not flexible, just enough. And then there's the space. We already knew it was going to be tight, and if the weather didn't cooperate, it would all be inside. More kids doesn't just mean more noise. It means more movement, more supervision, more chances for things to go wrong. I looked at her and said, I don't think it's harsh. And she didn't respond right away, so I kept going. We're not running a daycare, and I didn't mean that in a rude way. Just realistically. This isn't an open event. It's a planned party for a specific group of kids, and those kids were invited. These 2 weren't, I said. Not because we don't like them, but because we didn't plan for them. She nodded a little, still not fully convinced, so I added, and John's never even mentioned them. That part mattered to me more than I expected. Because if John had said, hey, I really want Travis's brothers there, that would have been different. But he hadn't. Not once. This wasn't about including someone important to him. This was about accommodating something unexpected. And last minute, she sat there for a second, thinking, weighing it. You could almost see the conflict on her face, wanting to be kind, but also wanting to be fair to everything we'd already put into this. And finally, she let out a small breath and said, okay, yeah, not fully confident, but accepting it. And that was it. We made the decision. We were going to say no, politely, respectfully, but clearly. And even as we agreed on it, there was still that quiet feeling in the background. Like maybe this wasn't going to stay simple for long. We talked it through more, and the more we did, the more it stopped feeling like a small request. Because it wasn't just about a couple extra plates of food, it was everything around it. Our house isn't big. It's comfortable for what we need, but for a group of kids, it fills up fast. We had already mapped it out in our heads, where the kids would sit, where the games would happen, how we'd keep things moving so it didn't turn into chaos. And even with the number we planned for, it was going to be tight. Then there was the backup plan. We had activities set up at a nearby park. That was the whole idea. Let the kids run around, burn energy, keep things easy. But the weather forecast? Not great. Cloudy, maybe rain, and if that happened, everything moves inside. All of it. And suddenly, instead of a controlled environment, you've got a packed house full of kids with nowhere to go. Now add 2 younger kids into that mix. 6 and 4. That's not the same energy. 8-year-olds can mostly entertain themselves. They follow the group. They understand the games. But younger kids, they need more attention, more direction, sometimes more patience, which means either we adjust everything or they get left out. And neither of those feels right. Then there's the food. We didn't overbuy. We didn't plan for extras. We calculated portions based on confirmed kids. Snacks, drinks, cake. Everything was measured out to make sure no one was left without, but also that we weren't wasting money, because we can't afford to just add more last minute. And when you look at all of it together, the space, the weather, the age difference, the budget, it stops being about generosity and starts being about whether the whole thing still works. And honestly, it didn't. Not without changing everything we had already planned. So we made the call. Not emotionally, not reactively, but practically. We said no. Politely, respectfully, clearly. And at that moment, it felt like the most reasonable decision we could make. And then, this morning happened. Renee messaged back. And right away, something felt off. The tone was completely different. Her first message had been casual, a little messy, normal, but this one, it was polished. Too polished. Perfect punctuation. Carefully structured sentences. Almost like it had been rewritten. More than once. Like every word had been chosen off. And it said, "We attend parties as a family, both parents and all 3 boys. Travis isn't comfortable attending alone, as that's not something he's used to yet. Given that we wouldn't all be able to join, we feel it's best for us to stay home this time." I read it once, then again, and the more I read it, the more it didn't sit right. Because on the surface, it sounded reasonable, calm, respectful, even a little formal. But underneath that, there was something else. Because now suddenly, this wasn't just about the 2 younger brothers anymore. Now it was about the whole family. Mom, dad, all 3 kids, 5 people. And that had never been mentioned before. Not once. No. "Hey, we usually stay." "No, is it okay if we come too?" Just added in after the fact. And the way it was framed, it wasn't a question. It was a position. A quiet kind of pressure. Like if we couldn't accommodate all of them, then we were the reason Travis wouldn't come. And that's the part that stuck with me. Because it subtly shifts responsibility. It makes it feel like we're not just setting a boundary, we're excluding them. And I just sat there thinking, was this always the expectation? Or did it only become one after we said no? And that's when it really started to sink in. This wasn't just about 2 extra kids anymore. It wasn't even really about the party. It was about expectations. The kind that are never clearly stated, but somehow you're still expected to follow them. Because looking back at her message, it became obvious. In her mind, this wasn't a request. It was the way things work. They go as a family. All of them. Every time. And by not automatically agreeing to that, we didn't just say no. We broke a rule we didn't even know existed. And the response to that? There was no back and forth. No compromise. No, "Hey, could we figure something out?" It was immediate. They just pulled out. Travis wouldn't come. Just like that. And that's when the weight of it shifted. Because up until that point, this felt like an adult situation. Logistics. Planning. Boundaries. But now, there's a real consequence. And it doesn't fall on us. It falls on John. Because now he's the one missing a friend at his own birthday. And I could feel that tension building. That uncomfortable realization. That sometimes, even when you're being reasonable, even when you're being fair, the outcome doesn't feel fair at all. And that's the part that's hard to sit with. Because now it's not just about whether we were right. It's about whether being right was even worth it. John asked about Travis that morning. Not in a big dramatic way, just casually, like it was already assumed. We were in the kitchen, getting things ready. Balloons half inflated, snacks laid out, that quiet pre-party rush starting to build. And he just looked up and said, "Is Travis coming?" Simple. No tension in his voice. No worry, just a question. And for a second, I paused. Because there's that split moment as a parent, where you decide how much to say, how much to explain, how much to protect. So I kept it simple. I said, no, he's not going to make it. And that was it. No long explanation, no shifting blame. Just the answer. John nodded. Just a small nod. Okay. And then he went back to what he was doing. Didn't ask why. Didn't push. Just accepted it. And if you didn't know him, you'd think it didn't matter. Like it didn't affect him at all. But if you're a parent, you know that moment, that tiny pause, that slight change in energy, where they don't say anything, but you can tell something didn't land the way they expected. Because he did expect Travis to be there. Not in a loud, excited way, but in that quiet, certain way kids have about the people who matter to them. And now that expectation just shifted. Without a scene, without tears, just a small adjustment. And somehow, that made it hit even harder. And here's the part that makes all of this feel bigger than it should be. We live in a small town. The kind where you don't just see people once. You see them everywhere. School events, grocery stores, parks, weekend activities, and more importantly, people talk. Not always in a malicious way, but things get shared, retold, reinterpreted, and little details, they don't always survive the retelling. So I can already imagine how this story is going to sound once it leaves our house. Not the full version. Not the context. Just the headline. We wouldn't let her bring her kids. And suddenly, that turns into, they excluded them. They made it uncomfortable. They were being difficult. And once that version starts moving through conversations, it doesn't really matter what actually happened anymore, because people don't respond to facts. They respond to how things feel. And in a place like this, reputation builds quietly, but it shifts fast, especially when it involves kids, especially when it involves parents. And now, without saying anything publicly, without defending ourselves, we're already part of a story that's being told without us in the room. And that's the uncomfortable part. Realizing that sometimes you can do something completely reasonable and still end up looking like the problem. And now I'm sitting here, after everything is already set in motion, just replaying it over and over. Because on paper, it feels simple. We didn't argue. We didn't raise our voices. We didn't say anything cruel. We just said no, calmly, respectfully, for reasons that made sense to us. We planned carefully. We stayed within our limits. We protected something we put time, effort, and money into. That should count for something, right? But then there's the part you can't ignore. The part that doesn't show up in logic. My son is missing a friend at his birthday. And no matter how reasonable the decision was, that's the outcome. And I keep coming back to that. Because maybe this wasn't just about being right. Maybe it was about choosing what mattered more in that moment. The boundary, or the experience. And I don't know if we chose correctly. Part of me feels like we did exactly what we should have, and another part keeps wondering if we made something small turn into something bigger than it ever needed to be. So now I'm stuck somewhere in the middle, not fully confident, not fully regretful, just unsure. And that's why I'm asking, if you were in our position, would you have held that boundary? Or would you have let it slide, just to make sure your kid didn't miss out? Because right now, I honestly don't know which one was the right call.